Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Robinson again, and we're going to continue our studies. This time we're continuing with multi-step equations, part 2. Linear equation has one or more variables raised to the first power. For example, x over negative 2 plus 9 equals negative 1. So notice that the variable x, which, by the way, a variable is a letter or symbol that represents some number or one or more numbers, and we are interested in linear variables, linear equations. So our linear meaning line, by the way. So when we talk about linear, we're talking about line when you draw the picture. So we'll graph it a little later on. So let's look at the equations. So here's our first equation. Solve for z. We have 0.8z plus 3.74 equals z plus 1.5. So our first objective is to get all of these numbers to the same side by using the additive inverse. And additive inverse means the opposite. So I'm going to add, I'm going to subtract the opposite of each number on the left side to move it over to the right side. So the opposite of plus 3.4 would be minus 3.74. That way, what it does is it undoes or cancels out what is left on that side with the plus 3.75, leaving us with 0.8z. On the right side, we'll have z, and we have a 3.74 minus and a plus 1.75. So same signs, I'm not allowed to add them. I have to subtract. So let me line up my decimal point and turn this upside down so I can subtract easy. I'll put a place holding 0 here. 4 minus 0 is 4. 7 minus 5 is 2. Put my decimal down. And 3 minus 1 is 2. So I have to choose the sign of the larger digit, which is 3.74. So I'm going to choose a negative or a minus and make that 2.24. Now I got to get the z to the other side over here. So I'll put imaginary 1 here so that way it looks nice to subtract. So the opposite of 1 is minus 1. And on this side, I'll line this up. That'll be 1.0, which would be the official way to write that, z. So now let's subtract. So on the right side, the 1z cancels out, leaving me with the minus 2.24. And on this side, I had a minus 1.0z, and I have a positive 0.8z. So let me show you that subtraction just to be sure. So I'll put my 0.8z. I have to subtract that. Borrow 1 from the 1 over here, make that 0, and that'll be 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. Put my decimal point in. 0 minus 0 is that. So I'd have 0.2z, and I have to choose the sign of the 1 because it's bigger, so it'd be negative. So I have negative 0.2z equals negative 2.24. Now I have to solve for z, so I'm almost done. All I do is divide both sides by 0.2, and that'll cancel out on the left side. That's negative 0.2. So that'll cancel out the 0.2 on this side, negative 0.2, leaving me with just the z. And now all I got to do is divide negative 2.24, and I'm going to make that negative 22 0.4 because you're not allowed to divide by decimal points. You're supposed to move them over to make them a whole number to divide by. So I'm not allowed to divide by -0.2. I can divide it by -2 because I moved the decimal point over. So check out my video on division of decimals. So now I can divide -22.4 by -2. First thing I got, same signs, gives us positive when we divide. And 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. Put down my decimal point. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So my answer is going to be positive 11.2. So let's check that out. And I want to get my calculator up. So positive 11.2. Just want to get my calculator up just to show you I could use the calculator. So negative 22.4 divided by, let me clear that one more. I'll go back to the other one. Make that negative 2.24, and I'm going to divide that by negative 0.2. That way you can see before I did the conversion that it would come out the same. So it's really the same thing. The only thing is you're not allowed to divide by decimal. So you should always change that to divide by a whole number. Okay, so we got the same answer. So I hope you got 11.2 for Z. Here's another one for you. Negative 3.k plus 4 equals 5 minus 2.k. Solve for k. Hope you can do it. Check your answers. I hope you understand so far. If everything's going good for you, great. If not, watch the video again. Write down your questions. Bring them in the class. Here's what we should know. I mentioned linear equations earlier. I want you to know we just did a couple that had one answer. Sometimes you're going to run into a linear equation with one variable that has no answer or infinite answers. So here's something you should note in the chart. Only one, if it has one solution like the one we did just before, there was one answer to it to make the equation true. 2x equal x minus 4, the answer would be 4. So I would solve for x by moving that over to the left side. 2x minus 1x would give me x, and that would be 4. And you can check it. 2 times 4 is 8, and 4 plus 4 is 8. So x will be 4. That would be the one solution. But sometimes we run into no solution that would be like this equation. So no number we can think of will make this equation true. X plus 2 equals x plus 1. Well, if x is the same number and the same value, and we're adding 2 to it on one side, and then we're adding 1 to the other side, it's not going to be the same, because no matter what x is, it's not going to be equal. So if I made x say 0, 0 plus 2 will be 2, and that same x is 0, 0 plus 1 is 1. 2 doesn't equal 1, so it's never going to be true regardless what values we pick for x. So that's a no solution. And if you look at it, it's two different things here that looks almost the same, but the number or constant is different. So be careful when you look at it. And speaking of look at it, there's some that we could look at. It's really hiding the same thing, and you'll end up with infinitely many solutions where you have any number could make this true. Like here, x plus 0 equals x. Well, that's always going to be true because I'm not adding anything to either to the side, so it's always going to equal x if that's the same number. If I pick a number like 5 plus 0, that's going to equal 5 if I pick x for equaling 5. So I'm not really doing anything on this side. It's really the same thing. So it's always going to be true regardless what number you pick. So be careful that you could look at the equation to see if they're the same exact equation, because that's the same, that you're going to have infinitely many solutions. And if they look the same and the constant is different, be careful. That's not going to be true. So let's try a couple. and see where we go. So let's look at this one. Q is what we want to solve for. 10Q minus 15 equals 5 parentheses 2Q plus 4. So let's distribute on the right side and see what we have here. 5 times 2 is 10. Don't forget the Q. And on this side, 5 times 4 is 20. So let's look at it, see what we got. Let me bring this side down. 10Q minus 15 equals that. Now, I'm looking at it, the 10Q, those are the same, but the constants are different. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, if I solve for Q, this is not going to really work out right. So let's bring the let me bring the 10Q over here. I'll bring the 15 over, but if I'm trying to solve for Q, I want to get all my letters to one side. This will cancel out the Q, and this is going to cancel out the Q, leaving me with a negative 15 equals to a positive 20. Well, that's not going to work out. So that's not the same. So let's try it if we got rid of the number first. So let's put this back. This is 5 times 2 is 10Q, and 5 times 4 is positive 20. And let's put this back. On this side, 10Q minus 15. So we brought the Q's over, but let's bring the numbers over and see what happens. So I'll make that positive 15 and make that positive 15. So that way the 15s will cancel out, leaving me with 10Q equals to 10Q equals 20 plus that gives me 35. Okay, so now let's solve for Q, bring the Q's over, so we have a minus 10Q, bring that over so we can get it over here. Now, this is where it starts looking kind of funny. My 10Q on the right side is going to cancel out, leaving me with just a positive 35. But on my left side, 10Q minus 10Q, that's 0Q, or just 0, because the Q's canceled out. 35 does not equal to 0, so that way, whether we got rid of the numbers this time, it didn't work out. So there is no solution for this. So we did it both ways, and we couldn't get a solution, no solution. So you have to be careful when you're solving your equation. Sometimes you're not going to get a solution. So look at it and see. And I stopped right here when I noticed the 10 Q's were on both sides that looked the same, but the constants were different. So here's one for you. How many solutions does this equation have? N plus 2 equals 1/3 n plus 6. So solve it and take a look at it. Check your understanding. Watch the video again if you don't understand. Write down your questions, bring them in, and we'll talk more about it. We got some challenge me problems. So I got a couple of good problems to challenge you. So here's one of them. So take your time, solve it for X, and it's a good one. And here's one more, solve for W, and I hope you can solve it and bring in the solution in class. Watch this on YouTube. My channel name is Dan Robinson. Check out again our PKMS Math Prep 16. It was a very good movie we made. So check it out. You could tweet me at drobmath1, and I'll be glad to see what you have to say to help me improve my videos. Well, I hope you got something out of the videos, and I hope you will bring in your questions, and hopefully you'll have good success in the future. Bye-bye. Bye.